good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for coming. Sorry, we're just a couple of minutes late starting. A huge warm welcome to Adam Underwood, who is the Sales and Marketing Director from AMA Communications and Telecom Solutions. Adam's been working with us for quite a while now, and he's our preferred partner, and he's already helping out many of our members already. Adam's here to give you some wonderful insights into cybersecurity, but what he does obviously is in terms of their business is telephony calls and lines, broadband, cybersecurity and continuity, and then the sort of marketing side of things as well in terms of professional audio, in-store music, that sort of thing. Obviously, there's also the big switch off looming over us all, but obviously Adam will also can talk to you about that also. We have already run a session on that, and I think we do have that recorded somewhere, don't we, Susie? So you can obviously access that as well. But I think in terms of cybersecurity, we do see in the news, and in the last sort of 12 months, just looking at a bit of information earlier, we've seen Marks and Spencers and Harrods both become subjective to ransomware. Jaguar Land Rover last September was subjected to a cyber security breach, which had a huge impact on their supply chain, and that all of their data was breached, so much so that it completely messed up their computers, and I couldn't get an upgrade on my key. And also EasyJet. But one of the bigger ones was South Staffordshire Water, where 633,000 customers and staff, where all of their data was compromised, and I think they had about a £1 million penalty for that. So it's really important for us to all take note of this. And I think that this is probably the biggest risk to all of our businesses, however big or small. I'm sure that you've all experienced some email that's come into your inbox, which is click this link. And we all have probably had to really think about this. So I'm going to be quiet. I'm now going to go hand over to Adam, and he's going to tell us a lot more about it.
Yeah, thanks, Em. Really appreciate the intro as always. So hi, everyone. Thanks for joining in today. It's not going to be a death by PowerPoint, although I am using PowerPoint. It's more really for an interactive session. So please do feel free to ask any questions or sort of raise your hand if you've got anything you want to ask during the session. I will sort of keep it fairly on point, and I'm not sort of going to eat into too much of your evening. But yeah, as Em's rightly said, you know, cybersecurity is a factor we all need to consider as a business, and you know that includes us as well as a provider and also as a business. You know, the threat is out there constantly. You know, these criminals seem to be nearly a step ahead. So they're always sort of scheming and coming up with ways to obviously con money out of everyone who's just trying to do an honest day's work. So yeah. Tonight's session is really just I'm sure most of you guys are doing all these bits and pieces anyway, but it's just, I guess, either act as a refresher, or if you're not sort of really up to speed on cybersecurity or just the basic steps, and hopefully this will give you, you know, a bit of a platform to work off. Again, I'm not going to go on the assumption that everyone's using an IT company. If you are, then naturally I'd expect them to have a certain level of cybersecurity for your business already in place. But again, you can use this as a session just to sort of bounce off them in regards to what they're doing, and just making sure they're sort of ticking all the relevant boxes and obviously keeping you protected. And for those of you that don't have any protection, then again, you can always talk to us, and we naturally use our preferred suppliers and partners, which we can again make introductions to if you're looking for sort of a continuous support mechanism. So without further ado, we'll jump in. So cyber safety. So why it matters. Obviously, Em, you pulled it up quite nicely there in regards to the summary. And you know, all these big organisations, you know, the M&Ss, Jaguar Land Rover of these worlds, they've all been targeted naturally because of the size and the sheer sort of potential revenue on offer. But that said, you know, these guys are smart, and they're looking at any angle, any sort of area to exploit. And from your perspective as business owners, as practice, optician practice owners, you naturally handle, highly sensitive patient data from a clinical and a personal perspective. And the reason they're targeting you potentially is because you're always essentially on. You always need a connectivity due to maybe an NHS contract, or obviously from a clinical and medical perspective. So there may be sort of holes or factors they can exploit because, as I mentioned a bit earlier, maybe you don't have an IT team on site, which I guess is probably highly unlikely. So maybe you're relying on an IT company that's maybe external. But again, they're looking at really attacking through various different mediums and matters, which we'll touch on a sec. But any instance where you get attacked or there's a circumstance, then naturally that could lead to business downtime. And I guess why we're all in business is to obviously make some revenue and money. So that's just a basic and a simple no-no. The patients will naturally be affected because that may see you having to cancel days or clinics, or hopefully doesn't roll into days and days. But again, that could be a potential. Obviously, if data's been exposed, then the GDPR fines may become applicable. And I think most importantly, to a degree, is your reputation. You've many of you probably been in business for years and years and years, and you've built this sound, and respectable reputation. And you don't want that sort of to all unravel, just overnight, essentially. So the change in threat. So cyber attacks on small businesses are rising every year, naturally, because most businesses are using a lot of their day-to-day activities and sources through the internet, so connectivity source. So that makes these criminals, sitting in their bedrooms in their pants and hoodies, writing all these devious programs to try and attack us, and obviously trying to skim some money out of us. So you can see the ransomware's attacks have increased by 126% in 2025. So that, essentially equates to 4 in 10 businesses they've reported a cyber attack or security breach, which, is, when you think about how many businesses there are in the UK, that is naturally a concern. Their trick seems to be, the least prepared organizations. So naturally, they're going to be looking at any holes that they can pick in. And I guess for you guys, you are attractive because, the data sets that you have on offer, and the detail you hold on any patient, could be of value. So obviously the dark web is an example, and as Em rightly put it at the start, we just maybe naturally as human beings assume that because we're so small, it won't affect us or we'll be fine. Whereas you don't need to be a big company. They are looking all about the data and its value to you, and what you be prepared to A, stay online, and B, for them to naturally disappear. I think the problem is that with any ransomware, if you do want to pay up and just try and make it all go away, then they know that is a potential avenue to explore again in a sort of a future time. So the most common threats. So we've all had them. I've had a couple today. Phishing emails. So your fake links masquerading as a known source, a supplier, someone someone you deal with. The banks, insurance companies. A tip is if you do, or you think it looks like it's a genuine email, you can always just click on the email address, which I'm sure most of you guys do anyway. It will then uncover what the true email address is, and the underlying email address, if it's a.underwood123651000 at hotmail.com, then that's naturally going to be a fraudulent email address and not a genuine email address from me. So therefore, obviously, don't click on any links. You're not completely, 100% sure on that. The sender, I guess. Ransomware is the most common, which they are just sending it out, looking to lock your system down or essentially take control, and then obviously hold you until they pay or you settle up a balance or fee that they deem is worthy of them sort of releasing you from the shackles. Weak passwords is another sort of avenue for them to exploit. I'm sure we've all done it, and I'm sure we're not all what's the word I'm looking for? We're not all we're not exclusively all using unique passwords, I'd imagine. We're all guilty of using passwords we know across multiple systems, because they're familiar, and obviously human nature is that everything is password protected in this day and age. So the obvious thing is to go, oh, what's the password that I always use? So again, we'll cover this in a second as well. Unpatched systems, so any old computers that maybe don't get used as often, or maybe they've sort of run out of their antivirus software, and you think, oh, we don't use that often. Not really concerned to us. I'm sure it'll be fine. These guys are smart. They're clever. They're looking at any little gaps to sort of weasel their way in and obviously get their claws in. So yeah, that's another factor. And from a staffing perspective, so your insider risks. So it may be someone within your team that may or may not have meant to click on a link. It may be a former employee that's obviously left the business. Again, still has access to certain systems, or they still have an active email address. All these types of things that we just think that I'm sure that'll be fine. It's just we're just trying to shut all the doors, guys, and just keep all the locks and doors bolted to make sure that something hopefully so silly or so easy for them to gain access to, it just isn't an option for them. So there's loads of different threats. There's obviously 10 there that we can sort of drill down on. Malware for us is, I guess, number one. Password attack, and again, we've just covered that with the easy to guess or the continuous use of the same password. Phishing, again, is the email attacking. So they're just phishing for information, hoping you click a link and then expose your credentials, and then obviously they're in. DDoS attacks are very, very common as well, depending on the standard of your current internet connection and your router that you've got in place. DDoS attacks can happen pretty much consistently throughout the day. So it's really important you have your parameters and levels set accordingly. And basically DDoS is denial of service, or DDoS is deliberate denial of service attack. So essentially what they're obviously aiming to do is just to interrogate the router and gain access, and then basically just put a block until they deem otherwise, or again, it comes down to pounds and pence and paying up what they deem due. So from your perspective as an owner, what would we be looking at? So I guess your PMS systems, again, I'm sure there's factors in play and there's security measures already in place. Always worth just double checking how you access that practice management software, especially as now as more and more becoming available to go via the cloud. So great for convenience when you guys, if you do have admin days, or you generally tend to work or log in online, maybe at home for an admin day, or maybe even do some work on holiday or when you're out and about. Naturally, that adds another layer of potential exposure, because you're not within the four walls of your practice where you've got sort of everything on lock. So again, something to sort of look at there. Any of the equipment you use currently, so your OCTs, your fundus cameras, again, anything that sort of accesses the internet, is a potential way in for these guys. So again, password protected, making sure the Wi-Fi network's all secure. It's on a certain level of encryption. And again, email accounts. So email accounts you're sending out, but also obviously receiving, just making sure that nothing there is clicked on without, I guess, trust. We touch on the Wi-Fi element. So part of what we do, guys, for any practice owners, we always interrogate the Wi-Fi setup, understand exactly what's going to sit on that network, and then deem what needs to go on a private network. And then if you're offering the guest Wi-Fi service to your patients, then an absolute fundamental is that you have a separate network which they can access for either a limited period of time. There's potential blocks on websites and bits they can access. And it's just obviously capturing their detail and just making sure it doesn't have any doors that it can get into the sort of back end of your business. So I'm talking the PMS, I'm talking PDQ machine. There's a couple of prime examples. We've had instances in the past where we've helped practice owners where they've had accommodation above and they were using a previous service where it was just a generic code and password to get access to the network, and said individuals from upstairs in the accommodation had actually gained access to that Wi-Fi network password, and were then naturally streaming and using basically free internet over the evenings. So obviously the usage was very, very high. I mean, there's a few major concerns. There obviously one, that's fraud, but two, from a business perspective, if you're not locking down your networks, then you don't know who's accessing when you're not in the building. So one thing else we can do is turn on your Wi-Fi so it only works at certain hours of the day. So I see when you're trading, the Wi-Fi will be available, and then when you go home for the evening, it can basically just disappear. And obviously laptops, which we've covered. So if they're used off-site, then again, that's another potential way in for these guys. So we've done that one. So assessments to actions. So again, I guess it's a little bit of educational for your team members. If you've got a reception-based email, or there's multiple team members actually handling those inbound inquiries, just making sure they just obviously know the source that the emails come from. I know that sounds sort of stating the obvious, but just making sure we're not just sort of willy-nilly clicking on any links within an email just because you just don't know. Again, if you are using the same passwords or sort of duplicating just for ease, because we've all done it, I'd obviously encourage you to use the strong passwords. There are password creation tools available. So if you wanted to get a unique password every time, then there are facilities out there that can help you. And again, if you wanted to ask us and point us in the right direction, we can obviously help you with that. Leaving devices unlocked. Again, we've all done it. Well, we've sort of nipped to go get a coffee, or the phone's rung, or maybe need to answer the door. You just don't know, again, who's in the four walls you practice. So again, just if you've got lock facility on your laptop or your PCs or any piece of equipment, and again, just use it where you can. Sharing logins and passwords, ideally it's a no-no. Again, appreciate some of you have close-knit teams, and the working life is in the practice life can be quite chaotic at times. But we just encourage multi-factor authentication. So if you're not too sure what that is, it's basically a two-layered approach. So you'd have a code and password. It's sort of phase one, and then it would prompt you to, or push out a separate code to maybe a separate email address or a telephone number. So again, it would prompt you to actually place all elements and detail in correctly for you then to gain access. So again, that's that next step and better level of protection for you and obviously your business. Virus protection. Again, I'm hopeful that it's the case that you've all got up-to-date antivirus software and firewalls. But again, if you haven't or you're not sure, then I recommend that tonight, tomorrow, or whenever you've got a bit of free time, just have a look at what virus protection you've got and just make sure it's sufficient for what you need as a business. So yeah, your steps sort of going forward. You're looking at automatic software updates. If it's a bit like the sort of the iOS and the Google Play Store, when they do their various updates to improve or enhance or maybe deliver new apps or whatever the software release is generating, it's very much sort of looking at that same approach. If you do just take the automatic updates that Apple and Google push through, it's just pushing that same thought process, I guess, and practicality into your practice. You need to look at your business grade antivirus protection, again, which we covered on a second ago. Again, secure Wi-Fi, just making sure everything's locked down. So any device that you use for business purposes needs to be on its own private network. And then if you do want to offer up guest Wi-Fi to any of your patients that pop in, 100% needs to be on its own guest network because you've got so much more control and visibility. VPN, again, if you're not too sort of familiar with what a VPN is, it's virtual private network. So every internet connection in any business, any home, has its own unique identifier, which is an IP address. So what a VPN will do is will basically place another layer, so it's sort of a secretive layer on top of your traditional IP address. So you could perceive to be in America, India, Ireland, wherever you want it to be. So it basically just gives you that extra level of security by masking your IP address by going to a data center somewhere else in the world. So again, just gives you that extra layer of protection. If you're not too sort of sure on VPNs or what to look for, or even sort of what sources to use, and again, we're happy to help. So happy to take this offline if anyone's got any questions on that at all. Regular vulnerability assessments. So again, just looking at the areas where these attacks could happen. So we've obviously covered quite a few areas. It's just making sure that the basics are being ticked. And just make sure you're not leaving any sort of door wide open for these guys just to weasel in and sort of get their claws in. So always look at a plan B into a plan C. So what does that really mean? That means that really you should have 3 copies of your data readily available. So 2 separate sets stored locally, but in different places. So whether that's an external hard drive, whether that's a fixed PC or a laptop within the premises, or even if one's stored at home. One off-site within the cloud, perfect. It just gives you multiple endpoints just to make sure you're sort of spreading yourself and obviously protecting as much as you can. The backups themselves, you need to test them regularly. So what we mean by that is just making sure that if it is, say, on an external hard drive, as an example, it's just making sure that you do test that regularly to make sure A, that hard drive still powers up, and B, all the data is obviously there and secure. So as we say, their ransomware is useless if you can restore calmly from a backup source. So these guys are basically relying on you having no plan B or C. So if they're in, they say, oh, wow, we're in, they're going to pay us X amount of money. We can just sit back and sort of relax and wait for the money to roll in. Whereas obviously what we're saying there is that if you've got sort of your insurance policy B and insurance policy C, then you're less likely to have to sort of go down that route of actually paying any bills or fees they demand for letting you sort of off the hook. So if it does ever happen, and God forbid it does, hopefully no one's been through this process. But yeah, very, very simply, step 1 is as soon as you're aware that this is sort of past that point of no return, it's just to disconnect that device from that internet source as soon as possible. And then isolate that. So if it's a PC or a laptop, then basically just, keep it powered on, but just disconnect it from the network. And then if you do have your IT support company, then naturally that's your next call. So just give them a call. Do not delete files or attempt to sort of make it go away by just sort of sticking it in the bin. Unfortunately, it's not quite as simple as that. Obviously, change all your passwords from a clean device. So I'm sure most of you got multiple devices, whether that's an iPad, iPhone, Mac, or PC, Windows Phone, etc. So just make sure you use a clean device. I guess the next step for you guys would also be to notify your insurer as well, that if personal data is involved, which naturally it will be, then again, there's steps to follow there. And of course, communicate what's happened with your staff if they're not already aware. So takeaways really is it doesn't have to be a taxing or complicated process. For us, it's just making sure that you've got your protection in place. So as we say there, your small steps equals big protection. So really just look at what you've got. So today or tomorrow, just look at exactly what equipment is attached to your Wi-Fi network, or is it Wi-Fi or is it physically connected with an Ethernet cable? Obviously, that all goes back to your one point of source, which is your router. Just making sure that any other devices that are on the Wi-Fi, do you have a private network and do you have a guest network? If you don't, again, talk to us. That's something we can help you guys with. And so you don't need to be an expert. You just need a plan and you need support. So that's what we're here for you guys. So your IT guys are there for you. If you don't have an IT support, we just want to sort of bounce off your concerns to us. And again, we're here and we're happy to help. The threats are real. It's unfortunately, it's the way the working world is. Everything is connectivity based. So we can prevent those, but you obviously need to take the relevant steps to protect yourself and the business. So hopefully that was insightful and you got some information there that maybe you didn't know. And I think from our perspective, is like Em said at the start, we're here to support you guys, across various different elements of your business, connectivity, telephones, but also, cybersecurity it really needs to be taken seriously, just because, there's so many, as I said, doors that can be left slightly ajar that you just think, oh, it's fine. I'm a small little company. They're not going to be interested in me, but that's exactly where they will look, because if they can score some easy money, then naturally they're going to be interested. And the last thing we want you guys to go through is this, when it can be avoidable, by taking some pretty straightforward and sort of basic steps. And say, well, we're here to help. So is there any sort of questions at all? That I'm happy to answer any questions if anyone's got some now, or if they wanted to contact us post this session, then again, all my details are there. You can call me directly or pop an email through.
I think
happy to help.
Sorry, Adam. I think Nicole, was that you? Is that you, Nicole? You've just put your hand up. Yes. So over to you, Nicole. I think you're on mute as well. Susie, do you have control of the mutes?
I've unmuted you this end, Nicole, but you'll have to do it at your end as well. We can't hear you, Nicole. Maybe you could pop it in the chat, the question, or...
While Nicole's typing, Adam, I've got a question.
Yes.
In terms of testing and like I'm going to say pressure testing your system, is that something you offer, like to test the vulnerability of the cyber security? Is that something you would do, or the IT company? And I think it's just which I'm a bit, who does what.
Sure.
In terms of, obviously, the IT look after the the VPN and the hardware, and then what, all of that side of things and software programs. But obviously, in terms of the actual broadband coming in, is you. So who would test the system to see, okay, well, actually, your system's really vulnerable, and we could easily access it through here, here, and here? Is that something you would do, Adam?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, Em, it depends where the IT companies sit. So if, obviously we're not sort of trying to sort of muscle in sort of, sort of bump them aside. It's more of a collaborative effort. So
Sure.
if there is an IT company already, in situ, then it's a case of, us potentially having a quick conversation to understand what they're doing, what their measures are, and then whether we can offer any sort of further advice or assistance. Where there's no IT company present, then we can do ourselves some basic interrogation, but then we also have external sources that we would use and trust to actually run a full sort of blown audit, if you like, and then they can highlight any concerns or avenues where exploitation could potentially occur.
Okay, thanks, Adam. So have we got? So Nicole has said, what about third-party equipment providers, e.g. our suppliers for Optos and OCT, as they provide their own PC as the driver for the equipment? Is the first part of Nicole's question, Adam.
Okay. So, yeah, I think based on how it's connected through to the internet is probably the first thing I'd look at. So is it Wi-Fi based, or is it Ethernet cabled in? And, what we would do is just have a look at the table of connected devices and just making sure that's a recognized source. Again, maybe it's a case of speaking to Optos as well, just making sure the equipment they've put in place, is there any antivirus contained within that sort of equipment or software?
I found my voice, Adam. I found my mic. So, do you mind me jumping in for a second?
You carry on.
So, as I said, the Optos and Topcon provide their own PCs to be the drivers. And so it is not on our network. It is standalone driving the equipment. And so it's whether or not there is that risk for us. Because our IT guys won't touch their computers. They just say that's not our domain. And we've just gone through a whole process of upgrading all our security. So we're now on full 2FA. Everybody has to have their phones. Everybody has to sign on independently. So we are going through the pain of doing that, because we've gone from a shared password system to moving our business to more secure. Different wireless points for PDQ, one wireless point for customer and staff, one wireless point for even our mirrors that we use for dispensing, and a separate one for PMS. So we've gone the whole hog. But those guys are the things that concern me, because they, it is data. It is all of their it still has a date of birth. It still has some of their history on it. But they are adamant that it is secure. Now, we've gone to Windows 11. We're still on Windows 10 for them. So, what kind of questions should I be going back to them with and saying, look, we have done all of these things to protect our data. This is still, in our mind, insecure or not as secure as we think it should be. What are you doing about it? What questions could I, prompt them to a response?
Yeah, I guess it's just understanding what measures they've got. So security wise, how easy is it to access? So is that code and password protected to sort of log in initially to get that data, or is it just sort of sat idle? So you can basically click the mouse.
Any one of us could log into that
in.
computer.
Is that same code and password?
Yes. So listening to what you are saying today, you know, exception for all the other computers around the practice, because we've just upgraded all our computers as well. For the Optos, any of our staff could log into the computer.
Sure.
Not so much for the OCT, because that's in the test room.
Yeah.
So, you know, as you're saying, if everybody has access to it, there is no, in my mind, there is no trail of, yes, you can see who logs in. Perhaps you might get a very rudimentary audit trail of who's logged in, but that's about it. So I need to be going back to them and saying, what measures do you have in place that you can assure me that ticks the boxes?
Essentially, you're obviously looking to protect. You know, you've gone through all that. Like you said, it's quite a change what you've gone through, and you know,
it's very painful.
Two-factor, you know, it's tedious, but then once it's in place, obviously it then becomes familiar. But it's just that initial process going from what you know to then obviously change. You know, we're human beings, we don't really like change. So I appreciate you've sort of gone through all those methods and sort of measures already, which is great. So it's just kind of, that looks to me like, not saying it's a weak point, but it's something that's slightly out of your control at the moment, which, yeah, I would say just try and get a handle on exactly what they've got security measures wise. Has it got antivirus on it? You know, can they introduce, you know, two-factor onto it? Is that something in their roadmap? Can they upgrade to, you know, Windows 11? Just understanding the operating software it sits on, really. Okay. So these should all be straightforward questions. They should have no problems answering as well.
Okay. Do I have time to ask my second and third question?
I'm fine. Yeah, carry on.
Yeah. I did have a question about what about VoIP systems? Does that have an impact similarly to what you're talking about there today?
So with our system itself, it's a unique code and password. So every individual has a unique code and password to access the system itself. So the back end, it's all fully encrypted. So from a access perspective, there is soon to be introduced, you know, two-factor as well.
For your VoIP?
So yeah, correct.
Okay.
So for the back end, so if you're looking for the data, so you're looking at telephone numbers, you're looking at call recordings, and there's all these fancy whizzy reports that are now available, which can have some elements of data attached. So from that perspective, ours, yeah, it's all, say, password protected, and it's unique, and it can also be fixed to IPs. So if you were to say wanting to access it remotely from home, then we would need to know your IP address at home as well for you to gain access. Okay, so again, just putting those extra layers in, unless you've got a fixed IP at home as well, that could throw up potential, not barriers, but every sort of 2, 3, maybe 4 weeks, if you're on what they call a dynamic IP, which most ISPs, so consumers, so for home broadbands, will put you on a dynamic IP unless you physically request a fixed IP. Basically, what a dynamic means is that they can change the IP address at their leisure. Why they do that, there's a variety of reasons why. But yeah, from our perspective, any connection we offer is a fixed IP. So therefore, we can limit who has access to particular elements.
Thank you very much.
Are there any? I can't quick. I'm trying to. I think I've got 2 screens to scroll between. I don't know if there's any other questions or anything in the chat. I think that some of the key I mean, us at SiteCAD, we're taking this all very seriously as well. We've had a couple of emails in the past couple of months, and Ros, the finance manager, has received a so-called email from me saying, can I pay this bill to a coaching company for 8,000 odd pounds, and they're based in America. And lucky enough, Ros knows that we're a very small team and we communicate. So she knows that we've done no coaching in America for about £8,500. But anybody could fall for that and click on the link or just pay that invoice. And I think, we're tiny, we're totally insignificant. And in terms of all of these great big companies like Jaguar Land Rover, and going back to what Adam says, it's really important that we all sit up and take note of this. So, we're really incorporating it as part of our sort of internal strategy as well. And we've taken, before I came on board, we didn't have cyber security insurance. So it's something that we've taken on as well with obviously our key partner who is a preferred partner anyway, very much like AMA and Adam here. So Brown and Brown, they're really good at talking to you as well about this as part of your insurance renewal. So it's something that we are really taking seriously as well. So it's really good to have Adam on board and for us to learn from him. All of these words of phishing and malware and spyware, and it's a minefield. You don't know. We're just the vulnerable victims. And until you look at those emails and you see, Adam Underwood 1 2 3 4 5 600 ABCD, and they just change a couple of digits, and they're very crafty and very clever. And you just don't take note of it, and it all looks exactly like it is from, say, Amazon is another popular one that they use, or they'll use everyday things that we are all waiting for a DPD parcel, or we're all waiting for that, and they just prey on your vulnerability. You think, oh, that's my parcel. Oh, I've got to put my bank details in, or I've got to release it because is it customs or something.
It's funny you say that, Em, because that's exactly what happened to me earlier. I had a DPD one, and true to form, I am waiting on the parcel, and I looked at it and went, something's not quite right about that. So again, you click on the email, so on my phone, clicked on the actual email header, and it was cleverly, because it was masked as DPD, but underneath it had DPD.12, I think it was, or something. So very close to what the traditional DPD email address was. But had I then clicked on that email address even further and said, I don't know, retrack or track my booking or reschedule my delivery, then that's all it takes.
Yeah.
And they're in. So it doesn't have to be a payment link as such. It could be, they're getting so savvy and ridiculous with what they will do, the lengths they will go to just to weasel into your device. So
we had that issue with our bank the other day, and so I've had to have a meeting with the team just to say, right, the things that would never come to an admin address is, and outline all of those. So if anybody got an email on our main admin account with certain businesses, delete. If in doubt, we have a folder that says suspicious, hold, because you might want Nicole to have a look at it in case it is actually a valid email, because some of them look a bit funny, but they are valid. And we've upped our spam blocker as well. So
brilliant.
Anything that has to happen, I've got to log in, I've got to look through the whole list and then decide if it gets released or if it gets blocked. But yeah, because staff, one of the key things you touched on, Adam, earlier was staff are not technically savvy. And I'm finding that certainly as we have changed over, the absolute frustration they have with having to work in a different way, because they're not used to understanding the why or what's happening to it. And we're just having to take them on a journey at the minute.
We're like creatures of habit, aren't we? We just like to, what we did yesterday or the day before. It's like, something new. And if it's
painful.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's not, and again, I'm sure everyone's team are great, and everyone does a great job for you guys, but they're not essentially sort of on the. It's not their business, They're not having the risk as much as obviously you guys as business owners. They probably go home at night and then don't really think about work till the morning. Whereas obviously you guys, you're probably thinking about work all the time, and this is just one more factor that, you know, you just need to really take seriously, and it's on top of everything else you guys have to do on a daily basis. But it's one that, as I said, we can make it hopefully as straightforward as possible. It's just being alert, I guess, as to, you know, what one silly click of a button could lead to a potential world of pain. And, you know, yeah, anything you can do to sort of educate your teams just to make sure. And it sounds like you've got it, you know, nicely set up there in regards to just making sure that, you know, it's sort of not left completely to sort of everyone to sort of willy-nilly sort of click on links and, you know, potentially do the wrong thing. So there's no guarantees in life, of course, but at least you're minimizing your risk as much as possible.
Thank you, Adam.
Yeah, thank you, Adam. I'm very conscious of everyone's time, but Adam is all of his details are there on the screen. Adam will talk to you about anything, not only the broadband in cybersecurity, but telephony networks and anything else like that you need help and support on, and just pick his brains for advice. He's you know, been working with us for a long time. Very, very good. Very, I think you've got over 50 years of experience or something between you.
50 plus years now. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, and you're only 30 something. I don't know how that works out. But
I wish I was.
But yeah, you know, he's here to help you basically. So, you know, you've got his details. Please do drop him a line if you've got any further questions or anything. He's only too pleased to help and support you. And yeah, I think Susie will be has recorded this, and I think the previous one that we did on the big switch off has been recorded as well, that you can have a look at that as well. And Adam's here to help you. But thank you all very, very much. I do appreciate your time, and it's been really interesting, Adam. Thank you very much. It's been really useful.
Brilliant, guys. Well, yeah, appreciate having me on again, and yeah, hopefully it's been useful and valuable. And like Em said, you know, we're really happy to help. So any question is not a silly question in our eyes. So please do feel free, if you want to take this offline, just to get in touch. And you're under no obligation to work with us. It's, you know, we're here to support you guys as a community and network. So anything we can do to help, you know, just you know, happy to do so. So please just get in touch.